Malo lava le soifua ma le langi e mama, whaatalofa atu o whalofa atu ia te autou uma. Welcome to another episode of Breaking Waves. Thank you everyone for always supporting us, tuning in, liking and sharing our videos. It is a beautiful Monday here in Aotearoa, and we have a very special guest. But before we get into that, I just wanted to thank our sponsors, because without you guys, we wouldn't be able to make the show happen. Thank you to BlueNet for all of your support, and also to Airveni Pacific for sponsoring us, and also with our clothes that we get to wear on the show as well. You guys are awesome. And if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and follow us on our YouTube channel if you have not already. And you'll be able to see more updates of the awesome interviews that we have with community people here in New Zealand. Anyways, we have an amazing guest. Oh, my say's coming off. We have an amazing guest. She is an awesome person serving her community. We're going to get to know her. Her name is Phylis Latu, and she is running for the Manurewa local board. Welcome onto the show, Phylis. How are you today?
Awesome, Anna. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. First of all, how is your morning?
Oh, we've had a busy morning. We've just been at Mahitahi for a pōwhiri, welcoming new staff in there and just doing a network. So it's been a pretty busy morning.
That's good, that's good. I know you're always in and out of the community. So first of all, tell us a bit about your upbringing and how you came to live and work in Manurewa.
Well, I'm born and bred in Papakura, and I've had a pretty stable upbringing with my parents. My father was a very strong influence in my life in terms of how I move about my life. I've played heavily involved in sports, whether it's from, believe it or not, from running, jogging, used to be a sprinter in Papakura, athletics, netball, softball, and then eventually I just wanted to go to James Cook. One of my best friends who passed away some years ago, she was from Manurewa, and so I tried everything to get to Manurewa, and then my dad just gave up and said, yep, let's go. So we moved to Manurewa, and then I ended up attending James Cook, and what kept me there is that I ended up marrying my high school sweetheart there in Manurewa. So Manurewa for me for the last 33 years has been home, that I call home, and I've embedded myself in everything that I am about Manurewa.
And at what point did you realise that this is my path in community service? Was there like an event that happened, or a realisation, or you kind of always knew?
No, I don't actually think there was a real point other than I've always served. We just don't know that we serve. I think we all have it in us. We just don't know that we're actually servicing our community. But I think for me, and I was talking to my sister-in-law, Crystal, on our way in, and I was talking to her about where is the finger point to that? You know, and I put it down to our, probably our nephews and nieces. It's like anything, you pull from your family and you see things that aren't happening. So at that particular time, our kids weren't able to get a job interview or jobs or do their CVs, just the basic fundamentals that we didn't really know that was an issue in our community. And so we decided to run a youth program, and I believe it was the calling point there. And it grew and it intensified, and we just started to add pop onto pop. What was the next kaupapa, or what was the next thing that was of interest, or what was the need? So it grew bit by bit, and we grew it.
For those of you who are not watching, Phylis does a lot. She's just not the type to show off everything that she does. But you work with so many vulnerable people, you know, from those who are financially struggling to those who have health issues, and even homeless people. You hosted the Guy Fawkes Night.
I did.
The reason why I'm bringing this up is because, you know, I was one of those kids who couldn't afford Guy Fawkes growing up. And if I had this, you know, growing up in Mangere, that would have been such an awesome thing. But tell me about that event and why you guys did that.
Well, we just had a back-to-back event. We run Halloween event as well for Manurewa. And the concept about the Manurewa Halloween was that 4 years ago, a kid got beaten up and their family got beaten up because they were doing a Halloween from home to home. And so there was a whole big concept of trying to bring it together to be safe. And so we did that, and we had over 3,000 people at that particular event. And then for the next couple of years, it grew. And so we always do Halloween event every 31st. And then the following week was Guy Fawkes. And we only just put that up because we found that there was a need in our community because nobody has money. Tell me how you're going to get $100. It's $100 versus a milk and a bread. And so I didn't have $3,500, but I went and looked for $3,500. And I think if people see the work that you do, they're happy to sponsor things because they know that it's going to go to the right event that you're telling them that that's what the money's for. And so it was a no-brainer to do Guy Fawkes for our families because we just don't have $100 to go and buy $30 that looks like $30 of Guy Fawkes, right? To what we used to get back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, and it was safe back then. But these days, we just don't have that money.
It's so expensive. Like $200 for like just a box right now. So it's crazy. Talking of which, you know, the cost of living is climbing and there's so many barriers around renting, home ownership, especially from people who have who've struggled in their financial or their credit score. Tell us about how you've helped people into, you know, getting to transitional home and what that's been like for you.
It's hard for our families, but our families have done that to themselves. And so what we have to then do is change behaviours. Anybody can put anybody into a home, but it's the wraparound service that you've got to provide, like budgeting. Where are they going to get food from? Are they aware to get food from if they have to pay a double up on a bill? So in a month, right, whether they pay their water rates at the beginning of the month and their power bill at the end of the month, they've still got to find the food in between. Not only that, it's changing healthy patterns of what we should pay for to what we want. And so I struggle in that sometimes when we're putting people into houses, what their spending patterns are going to be like. So we monitor them for a couple of months before we even put them into a home so that we can help change patterns and change behaviours because our wants aren't necessarily what we need. So we have to change that before we can change anything. Putting whānau or families into houses, that's easy. Anyone can do that. Everybody should have a connection to houses. We're fortunate because we've got 4 different agencies that we utilise to put our families into these homes. But we've got to start at the very basics, and that is stop all the domestic violence, because would you want to give out of rental property and they've got domestic violence? Probably not, because they're going to damage your property. So we have to help in those spaces. I think like a National Party member, but my heart is with Labour. And I say that because we always want to get our families into work so that it's a long term, it's sustainable. It means that they've got more money to spend on their families. But if everybody sits on the benefit, there's no benefit of sitting on a benefit because there's no money in it. And that's what makes our families struggle. And then when we go into homes, and if we're facing alcoholism, drug addictions, that's layer on top of layer. And we're not helping. If we identify and we know those types of things. So those are the things that we face, and that's an everyday of what we look like when we're looking inside a family for a home. And the living. Our cost of living is astronomical. And it's astronomical because we make it a barrier for us. We as people, we do it to ourselves because we don't know how to spend our money, or we think that our wants are greater than our needs.
I like that you say that you think like a national, but your heart is with Labour. And oftentimes I think about families who, you know, experience DV, and there's so much to it. Like it could be generational trauma or so like financial hardships. Do you think these kinds of problems require, what kind of solutions? Long-term solutions, or what do you reckon to solve these kinds of issues, especially within Māori and Pacific communities?
And they've got to be long-term solution providers, never ever the short-term, because our families fall back onto bad behaviours. You've got to walk a journey with them, and we never walk a short-term journey. We never leave a client until they're happy that they're okay, but we can see it. So for me, it's no use working on one family member. Say we're working on the husband because he's the abuser. But what happens to the wife? She is going to be stuck over here and we're pushing him here. Well, we've got to work to them together so that we're pushing them both along, because at the end of the day, they're going to go back together, and the people that are going to suffer the most are our kids. And it's huge in our Pacific whānau. And people don't realise that our Pacific, because they're such proud people, very humble people, and they're scared to reach out for help. But the help is there if they connect to the right services, because it's all about judgment, how people come over and how you receive people. And a lot of people don't like to be judged, especially in our Pacific space. As soon as they start to feel judged, the help's out the door because they stop asking.
That's so true. I think a lot of our people do suffer from judgment and shame. Something we need to all collectively work on, I guess. And
it's awareness.
Yeah.
Get an awareness. And it shouldn't be, nobody should be embarrassed. Abusing somebody, it's a behaviour pattern. It's something that, you know, they've come along in their journey and they've got to find another solution or way to cut it out. It's not easy. Like, people think it's easy to knock those out. It's not at all. But we've first got to start on education. Educating our families on domestic violence, because sometimes we look at our kids, right, and they're still hitting them because they don't see the children. They just see here and they funnel right there. And so we have to educate them to look and see our babies right there, right in front of it, because most times if we're fighting with our family members, it's always over money. It's always over money. You tell me what domestic, and if it's not about money, it's about cheating. Those are the two most common that we face. But 9 out of 10, it is money, because we haven't made some good choices, or we haven't reached out for help, or you're watching your family suffer. And they don't know how to rein themselves back in to go and find positive outcomes. They don't know how to reach out. Even if you're reaching out to an entity for food, that's a positive outcome. So we give out food parcels in Manarewa. Now, when we give out food parcels, you have to give 3 hours or up to 3 hours in volunteer work time to us. We make that so that we're changing, step one, behaviours. If you go to work and you go into a shop, you've got to pay for that, right? Now, if my expectation is if you're coming for us for food, well, you've got to pay back in time, because there's other things out there that you could be doing, and then you feel good when you're coming. And so when our families are saying that they don't want to be judged, well, you shouldn't be judged because you're giving back time. So you offset, but we're teaching at the same time, because people only know how to take.
That's so beautiful. I like your approach to that, because I do know a lot of food parcel places who just give it, especially during COVID. There were a lot of short-term NGOs formed, started and died during that time, which is what I wanted to get into, because you probably negotiate with government bodies, with other organizations and NGOs. What's that like for you, especially for someone who knows your community and who has experienced the ups and downs of it?
Oh man, it's hard. It is so hard it's hard to negotiate with people for contracts, because there are so many of us that are competing for contracts, especially in Manarewa. So people close down organisations and they don't give out information. Wrong thing to do, people. Wrong thing to do if you're NGR, because what happens is that if I'm not the right fit for you, somebody else has got to be the right fit for you. If we're not the right fit for those kids, somebody else has got to be there. But when people close off organisations, it is hard, extremely hard to get those contracts. And we constantly battle all the time for a contract. And I'm not even sure why we should be battling, because there is so much money out there for organisations to tap into. The problem we have is that people are so blindsided to one organisation. and they forget about other organisations. And I've been going to meet these candidates meetings, just to pop this in there. And why we go to them, I'm listening to this panel and they're just saying A, B, C and D. Well, hang on a minute. That's the wrong answer, because we should be open to everybody so that, we start to change behaviours as leaders. Like, don't close off organisations. Like, if somebody comes to me, I open up the doors to every connection that I have, because that's our job. We should be doing that. We should always be open to other organisations coming through, because we're not the one shoe fits for all. Because I tell you, my personality, Crystal's personality, we may not be the same fit for that family, that person, that child. And so there could be other organisations out there that could possibly have that wraparound service for that particular person.
And I love your mindset around collaborating and being open to collaboration, because I feel like it's easily said online, but in my experience, when it comes, there are kind of like snarky attitudes towards each other and politicking behind the scenes that happen. And in the community space, or any space that's taxpayer funded, or, for the wealth of a community, it kind of feels weird for it to exist there. So for you, how do you experience it first? Because this is me projecting, obviously. Do you experience it, and how do you deal with it?
I am an open book, very transparent with no filter. If I don't like something, I don't like it, and I'm not scared to voice it. If I want that particular contract or that particular money, I'll go after it for fit for purpose. Not because we want to build our bank account up. We want to get that money because we know we're the right people to run that particular program. However, I think everything is politics, and I'm absolutely just not happy with it, don't like it. I think if people get rid of the politics and remind themselves what is the purpose we're there for, they'll get the point of what we're doing. Because time and time again, over the last couple of months, but intensified in this last month, again, because I draw back from experiences, these meet the candidates, I find out so many different things about so many of these different people. And are they good? Do I believe they're the right people for our communities? Absolutely not.
Why do you think they're putting themselves forward?
What I can see and what I hear is there's a personal finance gain in it. So that could be whether they're getting the wages, or they can fund, or they just want power. None of those three are of any interest to me. I don't care about any three of those. What I do care about, and the only reason why I would care about it, is because I want more for our kids. Not only for our kids, I want better outcomes for our elderly. In between those two brackets would be our age brackets, and we can look after ourselves. But who's going to look after our elderly, and then who's going to lead our young ones?
This brings me into my next topic, because in today's world, especially on social media, we often see people promoting their good deeds, and it kind of just made me think about how you're saying people coming into spaces without good intention. What do you think about? Do you think service loses something when it becomes about visibility?
No. It comes about awareness, and it comes about education. It comes about letting people know, okay, we had this case. So, for example, I post quite a lot on my social medias, especially my work social media, because if we can help somebody that has a criminal past, that is on the benefit, that has 2 children, and they cannot get into a house, how is other people going to know about what you can do? And maybe they've been sitting at their in-laws, because like our Pacifica Māori people, we sit at our in-laws, we sit there and we're suffering. We suffer because maybe our in-laws just aren't great to us. And so how are they to know about those types of services? I also do it for another purpose as well. We talk about funding and how we can tap into funding. That's another way. That is another resource, because we're not government funded. We find our own money and we tag it to a particular program. And so no one in mine is paid except for one person that is paid in my organisation.
Wow.
So we do everything And a lot of my kaimahi or my workers, they're still on the benefit, and we provide them a volunteers contract, and then they take that back to MSD. We can't pay them because nobody wants to give money, especially now, because we're right in the candidacy, but really, who's actually doing the work? Like, I can hand on heart say, and people can say that maranga whānau do the work because we promote it. We do it live time, in real time. We don't do it like, I never ever post something from a week ago. It is always on the day, on the hour, or while I'm sitting there with you.
How then can people be more discerning around selecting, the candidate that they want to vote for? Because sometimes candidates come in with visibility that isn't genuine or without pure intention. How can people better discern that around politicians or people who put themselves forward?
Go and Google them. Like, honestly, everybody has Facebook, right? Go and jump on their page. I can tell you right now, like, I've had a hard time. I guess I was having this conversation with Italia, and in the last probably 24, 48 hours. And for me, I've been struggling with morally versus politics. In terms of what do I stand for, who am I, and what am I running for? And I think that the people that are standing for the candidacy, man, you've got to stand up and have a look at yourself, because some of the actions from some of our opposition haven't been great. We've been defending ourselves for the last probably 2 months, been in defence mode. And then when I go and have a look at their portfolios, I'm thinking, okay, what are you actually doing? Because I can hear a lot of the time our opposition say, I'm helping the homeless. One of the questions I asked about a month ago was, how many homeless do we have in Manarewa? They couldn't tell me the answer. I went to the candidacy that I spoke about earlier, which was on a Monday, and I listened to them talk about rangatahi or youth. None of them answered the question. And so it's alarming to me that people can answer or want to stand in these leadership roles, and yet they're not out on the street. They're not out on the ground, they don't know, and yet these people are the very people that are saying all these disinformation type stuff. Like, still to this day, if you go and have a look at Purple, it's got save your parks. What are you saving the parks from? Because the parks were never in danger. But what we've used is colonisation, in my eyes, as a weaponise. So when we sit in meetings that the local board, especially of Manarewa local board, they opened up to having their meetings recorded. But what they've gone and done, what Joseph Allen has gone and actually done, is he's actually used it as a weapon to divide a community. Now tell me, in what leadership would you want that? Because I know, because I'm a part of the Manuel Marlins, I'm club secretary, and what he did for us is he divided a community, and he had Marlins fighting with Marlins. Now tell me, is that a leadership that we'd want, or a style that we would want? We have William Talangi who's actually putting it out there, and he's got it posted, him and his wife Ros. Again, you're following a leadership, and when we talk about behaviours, this is a bad behaviour, because they don't understand what rewa. We say we love rewa, we say love Manarewa, and it's plastered everywhere. Where is your love for our Manarewa if you're allowing a community to be at war with each other? We have our Manarewa action team standing on the corners, and even if Love Manarewa was there, I'd talk to them, because it's so hard to stand up there with their hoardings, right? It's hard to get up in the morning, because I don't, but I should, because my team is doing it. But when you get yelled at, don't sell our parks, there is something wrong there, and it tells me that our leadership that is currently there is not great leadership. And so if you can lead your team into doing the same thing, promoting the same thing, I think politics versus morally, and they should have a look at themselves. And we shouldn't be thinking about pay inside here, because, oh my gosh, you don't get paid enough to take abuse. That's my spin on the whole politics spin, and where I sit. I don't think it's a great feeling for us. I don't think it's really, it almost takes away or tries to take away who you are, so you're constantly reminding yourself, I am Phylis Latu. I am standing for the board because I believe in what I do. I know so much about our rangatahi. I know what's happening on our streets. I know where I want to champion, and I know exactly what I want to do if I was selected in there. And so those are things that I have to constantly remind myself, not what my teammates are telling me, but what I am and who I am.
I love that. I love that. So what does success look like to you in local board? What does just within that?
If I was in the local board or just looking at it?
Just in general. Like if you were to describe a local board that is successful, what would that look like?
First, get along.
That's
Honestly,
so true.
first have a board that gets along with each other.
Right. Why is there so much division in boards?
I can't speak for other boards. I can't even speak for the Manual local board because I don't sit on that table. I can only tell you what I see looking in. Everybody can see it because look at them. They're fighting. They're currently fighting. Go and Google it. Go on Facebook and you can see it. They're fighting with each other, but yet they're supposed to be our leaders. And so success for me would be just get along. That's what I see success. I mean, Italia and myself and Marshall, we've spoken about what that would look like for us if we were selected on the board. And it would be to serve the community at 100%. Even if we had to sit on a seat with, say, 5 love mana rewa, we would still get along because they're not my vision and they're not my barriers. We are our barriers if we can't stand up and say a point. We are the barriers if we can't stand up what is best for our community. It shouldn't be a 5 or a 3 or a 6 and a 3 or a 2 or, those numbers that they constantly throw around all the time. It should be if I got in, as an example, and none of my mates got in, I would still challenge them. I would challenge anybody if it wasn't the right thing to do. Because that's what makes a local board. That is what success looks like for me. Get along, move for your community, not for each other. Because what I can see currently is that the board is split. You can see it because they're promoting it, and you've got them fighting about selling of land because they're bringing it up. Love Mana Rewa have done so many dirty tactics that I've ever witnessed before, and it shocks me that the behaviour still carries on. One of the questions that I did ask, and I did ask this to Daniel Newman, if we got selected and we were successful, are we allowed to growl them once we're in and they were on the board with us? Because that's the first thing that I would want to do. If I was successful on the board, I would say, okay, do we get a whole table meeting so that we can nut out what happened through there? Because, you're still going to sit at that table if that conversation does not happen and be like, oh, I've got to sit with them. How nasty can I be with them? Because I'm pretty nasty. And I can be a nasty person. So I'd want to knuckle that out so that we can move about our week safely or our month, our year. I've got 3 terms if I'm successful. And we have been asking the question, how do we go 3 terms on serving on the local board? Because it has been really hard work to get there. My name's been in social media because Love Mana Rewa put my name as Maranga Whānau. We received $34,000. We actually applied for $57,000. We only were approved $34,000, and that was for our homeless program. Tell me, why would they bring that up? Again, we're doing the work. It's there. We've put our accountability report. It's there. So our colonisation comes back into play, and they use incorrect data because it's there, and they're saying that we've misused the funds. We haven't misused anything. You can see it. It actually cost our organisation more money to run the homeless program because we've still got to run gas, and we only got that homeless program to pay for a trailer for a washing machine and dryer, and we can serve hot kai out of it or food. We got it for towels, and we got it for hygiene packs. That doesn't do a role for a worker. It doesn't do gas. It doesn't do maintenance for our vehicles because we have to pick up and drop off those homeless. We have to take them up to MSD to make sure that we can get them into housing or make sure that they're getting money. That's not paid for. So why would you target people that are doing the work for vulnerable people? Because that's who they've just said that they stand for. But yet they're targeting the people that actually service them. Because I've never seen any one of them, any Love Mana Rewa, not even William, I've not seen them in any homeless space that I've been in.
Yeah, just reflecting on what you've said, it kind of makes me sad that we're being pitted against each other, you know, during these times. And I really admire your integrity to your morals and to principles, your loyalty to morals and principles over, you know, because you share the same color skin or because you're from the same hood. So I really appreciate that. And so how, if you get the chance to growl them off, right? You get into local board and then you're going to set aside your differences. Do you think that they're like, if they don't decide to like clear the air, how do you work around that? Because there's still pettiness. Or do you think they're going to keep it professional if they get in or out?
From what I see, it is horrible that we have to speak against people like that. But their personalities have already shown me what they're capable of doing.
Yes. And it's about everyone else. It's not about you guys.
Correct. I would still, I work with people that I dislike every day.
Yeah.
But you know what? We still got to get the work done.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to suffer.
Yeah.
They're not going to suffer, but our
People.
families that we help or our community will suffer. What I would do is I would always have a wall up, because I've already seen how people run. And that is the successful thing about it, because once you're known to be shady or doing things and misleading, it is hard to be able to trust through your journey. And if I'm successful, I would have 3 years. That's a hard jam for me, because as you can tell, I have no filter. So, you know, that's the thing.
As you all can tell right now, I love this. And thank you for your honesty. It's very refreshing to have people who are just straight to the point, know what they want, know why they're here. So the next question I wanted to ask you was, what keeps you grounded in service? Because, you know, you seem like a very strong woman, but I know no one is perfect and we all have our ups and downs. When you're having times where maybe it feels burdensome, I don't know if you have them, how do you deal or cope with those things? Or is it just like, this is me?
No.
Yeah.
No, I have those moments a lot, but I guess for me, I'm grateful that I have a solid home foundation. My team, because my team is not brought together by odds. My team has been put together by hand selection. For example, I have my sister-in-law, Crystal. She is my right-hand man in everything. And I believe in sharing the load. But then I have my husband, who's now working with me. And he is the foundation of our whole entire Latu family. He is my foundation. He keeps me grounded. He challenges me when he thinks, maybe I didn't make the right call today. Then I have to challenge him, because he's only just come into the business. And I'm like, what do you know? How is that happening? Why is that happening? But I think knowing that, I think it all just comes back to what are your basic home foundations? Because you can't run anything, right? If your backyard is dirty, and my backyard is dirty, it is so dirty. But you know what? I own, and I'm accountable for everything that I've ever done in my life. I mean, there's a word I want to call myself, but I'm not going to call it, because we're, doing this live. But I'm accountable for everything that I've done in life. I'm not embarrassed of it. My husband and I have walked through it, and we just came from Mahitahi, and we saw somebody that was from my past. And I said to Chris, this would be cool to talk about that, because, But I think we all have to be accountable for everything that we do, and no one's backyard is clean, nor is mine. But I do know that what keeps me grounded is my immediate family, because everybody has their own family dynamics of what they make up. Mine may not be blood. Actually, they're probably not blood, because my family is dysfunctional. So I don't even go and see my own family. But what I have built up is on my Samoan family. And I'm very grateful for them, because they keep me very grounded. And I've probably know more on the Samoan side than what I do on my Māori side, because that's who my husband and my children are. And so not even my kids are great leaders, but they're good people. They've got good hearts. And I run with my nephews and nieces majority of the time, because Crystal is a mum of 8. 8 children. She makes up the population of our foundation. And so we've had heaps of learning through them, through her 8 children, and what it looks like to mingle our kids together. And I can hand on heart say, if I took my kids out and you watch different family dynamics, and some nephews are sitting over here, some are over there, ours just come. It's just automatic. And it's almost like they pick up, although they're with each other all day, every day, I must say.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. And the last question I wanted to ask you was, what would be your word of advice? Actually, no, this is the second last question that I'm going to ask you. The other question is, you're in the community a lot. If people don't vote for you, what are they risking?
Man, you're risking everything. You're risking no fields with lights on it. You're risking stinky fields that you can't even play on. You are risking people not having a voice for you, because our boarders more interested in fighting with each other. And, you know, I give my hands up to Matt and Daniel Newman as our counsellor, because, man, they take through so much and they take it in strides. So you're risking a lot, because we can move mountains for you, and we're not scared. I am not scared to voice my opinion to either or to anybody to ensure that our community gets what they need. Or you're risking our Pacific whānau of going into spaces that are underutilised, because that's the only space I want to champion is our parks and facilities. Now, if you go around in our site and you find all those buildings that are underutilised, not even maintained, like you're talking the Samoan community, down in Clendon Rec, there is a grass field area where we have a basketball hoop. On the other side of it, they want to build. They want to build a centre there. And to me, it's like, why do you want to build there? Go back to Clendon. Put all that money that you're going to build over there, put it over into the Clendon Rec, because there's an ECE that's not even being utilised. You know, put that money, fuel injected to whatever's there, so that we can utilise more of the spaces that we have. That is what you'd be facing, because currently while we were coming here, I had a Samoan community trying to call me because they probably want to book my space, because everywhere else they say it's booked, but it's actually not really booked. But I think it's in the taha basket of why they don't want our Pacific family going in there to hire their spaces out. So that's what they're risking.
And what would your word of advice be to anyone who feels called or drawn to community service?
Man, if that is their calling, go and give it a go. Because you know what, so many of our Pacific and Māori people, we know how to service. They just don't know the organisations. For me, when I started Maranga Whānau, I already had the networks. I didn't need to get paid for it, and we did it in I keep saying in my garage. Well, I never worked in my garage, I worked in my kitchen. And so we did that for almost a year. Everybody has their own networks, and it is about how well connected you are to your community and how you can build your business, and any one of us can do it. I challenge people, if they want to give it a go and they want to walk in my shoes for a week, come to me. We have placements with us all the time, and I think we have about 13 placements, Crystal. I think we have about 13 placements with us. And so they are out there, and I feel sorry for some of our placements, because they've had to go to Solomon Group or any organisation courses. Not because they want to go there, it's because people don't want to look at our Pacific people. We have a Pacifica Tongan that's with us now, and he's a pretty awesome guy. People don't want to take a chance on him, and he's been trying to go out there for social servicing, and they don't want to hire him because he's big. And he talks different, sounds different. But to us, that's normal, right? To other people, that's not normal, that want to hire him. But he's actually a really good person. And less than a month ago, we gave them the space to run a whole activation, amazing race, and they did amazing in that. And I think we had just under 100 people come and attend that for free. Prizes were for free. Our community supported us, like Rui Licensing, Brian, Blake. We had the Manura Marae. We were able to go up there. Manarewa Pools. We had Te Hapai or Haura, so we had different organisations, Touch New Zealand, Moving Manarewa, they jumped in, they helped supported us in prizes, and that's all we needed. We just needed people to give back so that, you know, they had a sense of purpose of why they were doing the amazing race. But really, in hindsight, all it was for our placements to have space to run. And for our community, it was for them to engage with new people. So we had elderly, we had youth, and then we had our in-between age brackets. And we had one person that actually came, that was her first time out of her house since she lost her baby, her 7-year-old baby. So, and she absolutely enjoyed it. So those are what we give. That is what people would be missing out if they didn't vote for us, didn't vote for me. But my last words of encouragement was to go and give it a try. You won't know until you try, and reach out to organisations that you know that can help.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us for this. Voting closes on the 11th of October. Make sure you take action team, Phylis, Italia, and we'll probably bring up a graphic. Sorry, Karl, our producer Karl, to show what team they're in. Manuira Papakura Local Board. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Do you have any last words?
Just thank you. Thank you for Bluwave for jumping into our space, giving us a platform, and especially to you, Hannah, we really appreciate it. And then taking on all my non-filter today.
Love it. Thank you so much. All the best with the elections. And she's going to come on the show again at a later stage. Breaking Waves.